The Emperor's New Groove from 2000 follows Kuzco, a young, self-centered emperor of a vast Incan empire, who is transformed into a llama by the vengeful advisor Isma after planning to destroy the village of a humble peasant Pacha. The narrative explores themes of personal growth, ethical responsibility, relational intelligence, humility, and the transformation of character through adversity. Kuzco initially embodies arrogance, selfishness, and impulsivity, relying on his status and authority to navigate challenges, while Pacha represents empathy, moral steadfastness, and relational awareness. Their evolving relationship illustrates how interpersonal skill, ethical reflection, and collaborative problem-solving are crucial in navigating personal and operational challenges, even in humorous or exaggerated contexts. The plot escalates as Kuzco, now in the vulnerable form of a llama, must rely on Pacha's guidance to return to his palace and reclaim his throne while facing Isma and her hapless henchman Kronk. The transformation of Kuzco serves as both a literal and metaphorical vehicle for exploring the consequences of self-centered decision-making and the importance of ethical consideration in leadership. The narrative emphasizes that personal mastery, ethical judgment, and relational intelligence are essential for resolving conflicts and achieving meaningful outcomes, particularly when previous reliance on power and privilege is stripped away, forcing reflection and growth. Relational dynamics are central to both humor and moral development. The initially antagonistic relationship between Kuzco and Pacha evolves into one of trust, collaboration, and mutual respect, highlighting the significance of empathy, communication, and ethical negotiation. Their interactions demonstrate how relational intelligence and moral growth can transform both character and outcomes, illustrating that personal development is inseparable from engagement with others and the ethical consequences of one's actions. Humor is strategically integrated into these relational moments, enhancing engagement while reinforcing lessons about humility and cooperation. Isma functions as both comic antagonist and moral foil, representing manipulation, ambition, and ethical corruption. Her attempts to seize power through deception and coercion illustrate the consequences of prioritizing self-interest over relational and ethical responsibility. The narrative emphasizes that leadership and influence devoid of ethical grounding and relational awareness generate instability and conflict. Kuzco's eventual opposition to Isma underscores the necessity of integrating intelligence, moral discernment, and strategic foresight to counter manipulation and achieve just outcomes, demonstrating that heroism and ethical agency often require collaboration, courage, and adaptive problem-solving. Action and adventure sequences, though exaggerated for comedic effect, combine elements of pursuit, environmental interaction, and creative problem-solving. Kuzco's physical vulnerability as a llama necessitates reliance on cognitive skill, ethical decision-making, and relational coordination with Pacha. These sequences illustrate the interplay of ethical judgment, adaptive intelligence, and relational competence, reinforcing that effective problem-solving requires multidimensional capability. The narrative uses humor and absurdity to highlight the practical and moral lessons embedded in these challenges, emphasizing growth through experiential learning and ethical reflection. Psychological and ethical dimensions are explored through Kuzco's transformation, confronting him with the consequences of his prior selfishness, impulsivity, and lack of empathy. The narrative examines the development of self-awareness, moral reasoning, and relational intelligence, illustrating how adversity catalyzes personal growth and ethical maturity. Kuzco learns to balance ambition with consideration for others, to integrate personal desire with collective responsibility, and to appreciate the value of collaboration, empathy, and moral discernment in leadership and everyday interaction. The film also emphasizes themes of humility, ethical leadership, and the social consequences of one's actions. Kuzco's journey from arrogance to relational awareness demonstrates the ethical and practical necessity of considering others' perspectives and needs. The narrative underscores that leadership and personal influence are most effective when guided by moral clarity, empathy, and relational skill, rather than entitlement or self-interest. Pacha's steady moral compass provides a benchmark against which Kuzco's growth is measured, reinforcing the narrative's focus on ethical and relational development as integral to competence and heroism. The climax integrates relational, ethical, and operational threads as Kuzco confronts Llama and regains both his throne and ethical grounding. Resolution requires collaboration, moral reflection, adaptive problem-solving, and relational intelligence, demonstrating that heroism and personal growth are inseparable from ethical awareness and social responsibility. The narrative concludes with a synthesis of learned humility, relational skill, and ethical judgment, highlighting that effective leadership and personal agency are rooted in the harmonization of intellect, ethics, and relational competence. Cinematography, visual design, and sound support narrative clarity, humor, and thematic resonance. Exaggerated physical comedy, expressive character animation, and vibrant environmental detail enhance engagement while reinforcing ethical, relational, and cognitive dimensions. Musical scoring and auditory cues emphasize emotional and narrative stakes, ensuring that technical execution complements psychological, ethical, and relational exploration, rather than functioning solely as entertainment. The integration of visual and auditory elements with narrative complexity underscores the multidimensional nature of personal growth, ethical agency, and relational intelligence. Ultimately, The Emperor's New Groove presents a narrative in which cognitive skill, ethical reasoning, relational intelligence, and adaptive personal growth converge within a morally, operationally, and relationally complex environment. The film emphasizes that mastery, heroism, and responsible agency arise from integrating intellect, moral clarity, emotional insight, and relational coordination. By blending action, humor, psychological exploration, ethical inquiry, and relational development, The Emperor's New Groove reinforces the appeal of protagonists who harmonize skill, morality, and relational awareness to navigate high-stakes, multifaceted, and morally instructive scenarios, illustrating that true growth and heroism require the alignment of personal development, ethical responsibility, and relational competence in challenging and transformative contexts.